the voice of the BYU Cougars. He is one Greg Wrubell. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Shep. Hello, Brian.
Hello. I'm sorry. Right when you said that, I just thought of, like, this is my favorite Canadian.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I have Drake, I have Justin Bieber, but then you are number one. You've been number one for a while, so I kind of had like a little
over Drake and Justin Bieber.
Yeah,
Greg,
that is celebrity.
That is
high praise.
A little bit.
I appreciate that.
You know, it's more personable here, and yeah, you know.
You probably had more dealings with me than Drake, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
But not Justin Bieber.
Not Justin Bieber. I went to like 5 of his concerts, so. Okay.
So, Greg, you had some pretty big news last night. You had the season debut of BYU football with Kalani Sitake, and it wasn't that far before that we found out Kalani Sitake received a contract extension through 2025. Yeah. I'll ask you the question we were talking about in trending, and then it's our question of the day. What does this extension mean for the BYU football program?
I think it was just after rehearsal ended for the show that we found out that this came across, and so I thought, well, this is great. We get to chat with Kalani about it, and he didn't want to make it about himself clearly on the show. You know, it's a representation of commitment. He said not just for him, but for the guys, the players, the boys on the team, and what they've been doing. And more than anything else, I think that's what it is. It's an affirmation that the direction things are going is a really pleasing one. And he's now been extended a couple of times before any talk of expirations would ever be an issue, which is also great. Yep. And I think it also just signals a certain level of stability. For anybody that wants to know where BYU football is going, they've got a pretty good indication. And the numbers are great right now. I mean, it's with the schedules BYU has year in, year out, you can't necessarily go apples to apples from 20 or 30 or even 40 years ago because of how schedules are constructed. But being a dozen games above 500, getting to a bowl pretty much every year, winning most of your bowl games, the 11-1 season, the national reemergence of BYU in a way, all happening under his watch, all really positive signs.
Do you think that this extension could help, I guess, BYU's resume when it comes to conference expansion and conferences like the Big 12, you know, looking to add a team like BYU? Yeah,
it's another indication if you're looking at BYU for something like that. There's an anchor, there's stability, there's direction. There's not a real fear as to what this program might look like or how it's been performing. I think all the questions have kind of been answered at this point.
So I was going to ask you a Big 12 question at the end, but since it was just brought up real quick before we move on, does this BYU to the Big 12, the speculation, the rumors that are out, does this feel different to you than in years past?
It does because of where the leverage lies right now. In the past, the Big 12 or any other P5 conference had the leverage over who was ever, seeking an opening or an entree to those particular leagues. And now, with the Big 12 operating at somewhat of a disadvantage numerically, in a lot of other ways, people talking about P4 suddenly, there's now an element of leverage that swings to the schools that could help add value. And as it's been talked about and written about, there's one school out there that's a free agent, if you will, that adds the most value, and that's BYU. And so I think it's never been a better opportunity, a better timing situation for BYU, especially coming off the 11-1 season. And I think even this game Saturday, I think is another decent indicator of where BYU is in the national landscape. I think it'll be evident that the Cougars will control most of the crowd in that building, and that's a factor. Should the Cougars play well and win in that national marquee situation, that's another factor of, wow, this BYU program is something to kind of reckon with, recognize, and see as a value-added proposition.
So when it comes to Saturday, I mean, I think us as fans and analysts, we have tons of question marks, maybe some concerns. But when it comes to the most intriguing headlines for this game against Arizona, what stands out to you most?
Well, I think it's going to be just how much continuity BYU can display with a new quarterback and a new OC. Because generally speaking, and I'm going to get to this in a second, why it's different for BYU, but generally speaking, new regimes with new quarterbacks and new OCs and new head coaches coming together on the first game, those first games rarely work out perfectly.
Horrible.
In fact, if you look at BYU's last 5 OC debuts, the Cougs have averaged under 17 points per game in those games, in those first games. They'll ultimately be good and can be good, but the first games are generally a bit of a struggle. Now, how is that now? And Arizona has the new quarterback. They have the new head coach. They have the new OC. They're right in that mix where that could be a low-scoring game for them. So why does it not apply to BYU? Well, to an extent, because Aaron Roderick's already kind of been in the seat. All right. Yes, he's a new first-year OC, but not really. It's kind of with an asterisk. He was already the pass game coordinator. He was already involved in play calling. He's done the job before. That's different from Arizona's OC, Brennan Carroll. This is a new thing for him. He's been in the NFL, hasn't been a college OC. All these things coming together at a different time for Arizona. But for BYU, there's a little more continuity. I mentioned A-Rod's history, and Jaron Hall's already had starts. He's been under fire. So I think BYU's in a better situation for a first game scenario. Plus the head coach is the same. Almost everyone else is the same. It's a different deal from Arizona to BYU. So I think of this battle of, first game OCs and new starting quarterbacks, BYU has the edge.
So let's take this a little step further, and feel free to answer this however you want, whether it's with actual statistics or more scheme and overall stuff. What are your expectations for Jaron Hall in the offense?
Well, I don't think it's unreasonable to look back at his previous cameo in 2019 and say the way he plays then can produce numbers now. It's arguable that the supporting cast around him maybe even a little better at this point, even though the Cougars lost, a great receiver to the NFL. I think personally this could be a Gunnar Romney year. I just got a sense if he can stay healthy.
I'm with you. High five.
If he can stay healthy. And his thing has just been that, playing every game, and then when he's playing, being full go, because he'll sometimes come back and play through stuff as well. That's been his only drawback at all. If Gunnar is a healthy Gunnar Romney this year, I think he's due for a massive year. I think he's that good. He's really impressive, and the crew around him is excellent. The tight end options are solid. The backfield we know is pretty stout, and Jaron Hall, being a playmaker that he is. It's blue goggle time, but
there they are.
I just think
there it is.
that BYU can really kind of pick up where it left off a little bit offensively, and that's what I'm most excited to see is just how much of a role they can get on right from the start.
Well, I can't be the only one not.
I'm with you with
we're gonna do this.
I'm with you with Gunnar, and that makes me excited because when I talk to former players and other analysts, they kind of look at me sideways like, what are you thinking? And I'm like, I can't be the only person that sees something special in this kid. So I'm happy that you agree.
I do see it.
So we talked about the offensive side. Let's go to the best side of the football, which is the defensive side. What playmakers or storylines are you looking for heading into this game?
Not that they're the no-name defense, but I think they kind of have rallied around that identity to an extent where there's so much focus on the offense, and there's so much attention to the fact that you lose Kyrus Tonga to the NFL and other players, and I think they've kind of rallied to kind of promote themselves as a group force and a group strength, and we're going to be heard from this year. And I really do think that, yes, while there will be some household names by the end of the year, I think it's going to be a strength in numbers situation for BYU, particularly up front. I don't think that despite the loss of impressive players that went on to play at the next level, BYU should have to take a necessary step back on the front line. And I do think on the back end, if there's more strength on the back end, and the coaching staff has not been shy about talking about how impressed they are with the back end talent right now, that should help things up front and maybe even help a little more aggressive mindset from game to game. And the linebacking core, and I'm going to include Ben Bywater in that core right now because I think he got a lot of valuable reps during camp. I think that those first four, if you will, with Peely and Wilgar, Bywater, Tooley, that's a really strong group there. So I just believe in this defense. I think Coach Tuiaki's numbers have held up over time now. You've got a nice wide sample of 5 seasons to go off of. They're legitimate numbers. They've excelled at taking away the big play. Teams rarely beat BYU on explosives, and that's been a real strength of this team. And so there's a time to be conservative and make sure that things are in front of you. But I think also Coach E and Kalani will know when to dial it up when they feel they've got the strength on the back end, again, to dial it up a bit on the front end.
So this may put you on the spot, but what's interesting to me, if you can think back, over, I don't know, 10, 20 years, where BYU hasn't had, a specific standout player, right? Like a no-name defense. If you think that they are more productive when it comes to not having a star player and standout, or if they're more productive with a group like this, coming into the season? Well,
I've always believed, and maybe it tends more toward the offense than the defense, but it's tough to have a special season without really special players. And I mean special statistical players. The 1,000-yard rusher, the 3,500-yard passer, the 1,000-yard receiver. You kind of need those guys to have big years. That's kind of proven itself over time. If you have just a bunch of decent guys, a bunch of really good guys, but no real standouts, it's hard to have that special year. Last year, I think, qualifies as a special year. Well, Dax Milne was special. You know, Zach Wilson was special. And Tyler Algier were all special. They had those monumental numbers. It's a little different on the defensive end, but BYU's not known as a team that, say, racks up INTs at the corner spot, for example. If the corners are suddenly giving you, 3 or 4 picks a year, that's a change. That's actually a big difference. And so I think there are some numbers you could look to defensively to find stars and standouts. But I do think, again, overall, that it's going to be a strength in numbers situation defensively.
I'm really excited, and I agree with you 100% on Gunnar Romney. The ability for BYU to throw the ball downfield, I think, is going to be there again. We saw it last year, and it proved to be such a massive weapon for BYU. But I also expect a really, really big year on the ground. And I love what Tyler Algier brings, and Lopini, and obviously with Jaron, you have that aspect as well. I think the ground game is going to pay off big for BYU.
And it did last year, and it did with a scheme that the A-Rod kind of carries forth from Grimy to this season. And BYU found out what it did and did really well and stuck with it last year. But they presented it to you different ways. So the challenge for the opposing defenses isn't that BYU runs a ton of stuff. It's the stuff they do run. They do it so effectively out of different looks. The presentation's everything. And BYU's excelled at presentation, at showing you different ways to get into what they really want to do.
I want to ask you an NFL question, and we talked about yesterday, cut down day. Obviously, teams had to be down to 53. A lot of Cougars, unfortunately, were cut. The hope is a lot of them will be placed on practice squads. We just found out that, and we believe that he's the only one claimed off waivers, but Chris Wilcox, who was released by the Buccaneers, was claimed off of waivers by the Indianapolis Colts. So that's certainly a good sign for Chris Wilcox.
And he was the only draftee that didn't stick with the 53.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about
and we have to say he was hurt. I think hampered. I think a hamstring.
Yes.
And never quite. Yeah.
So that's great news for him. That's being reported by the NFL Network. It looks like he's going to be picked up by the Colts. But between that, obviously all of the guys making waves and significant contributions in the NFL, Dax Milne making the 53-man roster yesterday, this is a really, really good time for BYU players to be making those types of leaps into the pros.
And even reflecting back to your Big 12 question, BYU's part of a national conversation in a lot of ways. And we watched a lot of preseason football, I know, and every time a BYU guy made a play, well, they mentioned BYU. It just kind of follows immediately. He's out of BYU. And you hear that a lot more these days. And so I think the recent draft results, the way these guys played in the preseason, winning spots on 53s, winning starting positions, again, I think BYU's operating on a real crest right now in a lot of ways.
You know what would be interesting to know? So keeping with the theme and topic of the NFL, when you look at Allegiant Stadium, brand new stadium in Vegas, all the hype surrounding it, tons of fans and everything like that. It would be interesting to know if BYU plays better or even wins when they're playing in NFL stadiums. And I know when I played 2009, we played at the Cowboy Stadium.
Beat Oklahoma.
Then we went to New Orleans and played in the same stadium. We played in the Chargers stadium as well. So it would be interesting to see if there's some type of stat or metric or maybe just even feel when it comes to the BYU football program over the years, if they elevate their game, if they get more excited. I know being a player, as soon as we walked in, everybody was just starstruck. Looking at the lockers and things like that.
Well, recently, FedEx Field and Arrowhead have been two that they've also played in.
Both losses. And so it's been a mixed bag in terms of results. But they've had some really games they've played well in and lost. But you go back to Kalani's first game as BYU's head coach, it came against Arizona in an NFL venue. It was down in Glendale. And, of course, BYU won that game. And, in fact, the parallels continue. Back in 2016, Arizona opener, NFL venue, Utah in week 2, another Pac-12 team in week 3, and that's what they have again going this year. Hope for better results this time around, because actually BYU did lose 3 in a row, I think, after beating Arizona in 16, rallied well to finish with a great record, but that'll be the situation this year. So a little bit of deja vu for Kalani, NFL venue, Arizona opener, but the fact that it's Allegiant Stadium, the crowd size going to be what it is, the placement where it is in the TV schedule, and then all the conversation percolating about BYU and does it move around here in the seasons to come. I think it's kind of a perfect storm for a chance for the Cougars to respond, play really well, hopefully get a big W and get this thing off on the right foot.
All right, it's time for the countdown. Greg, you want to participate with us? Now you do not have the music in your, so I'm going to cue you if you're willing to participate with us. Okay, Greg's in. So the countdown begins now.
Count.
days away.
Woo!
There we go.
Nice.
There we look. Nothing. I'm gonna say I'm over here. I need the high five
Is that the
too.
first time as a trio, do you think, for that particular
Maybe.
presentation? Yeah.
I think so.
It may be.
No,
Well done.
no, it is. Let's just say it
Okay,
is.
all right,
Let's just
fine.
say it.
We're taking it. It is.
It is.
Greg, great stuff as always. Thank you, and can't wait to hear you on the call on Saturday.
Looking forward to it.